Hey, what's up?
Hey, not much. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are things?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, right on. Well, thanks for doing this. Obviously, that's for the first thing. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Steve and Caitlin both were like, "You gotta get Sarah." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
get her."
I love them.
Yeah, they're the best. So anyway, the podcast is pretty simple. It's just about worst comics, worst shows. It's like a half hour, pretty late.
Okay.
I'll do like a pre-recorded intro before this, so it'll just go right into the conversation. And if there's anything you want me to plug, it'll probably be about 2 to 3 weeks ahead on episodes, so I can shoot you a message when it comes out. And if there's anything like specific you want me to plug in that time frame, I can. And yeah,
Okay.
cool. Are
Yeah.
you? Yeah, if you're good, we can roll.
I'm ready
All right, right on. Well,
whenever you are.
right, cool. So, the show is called Hell Gigs, and it's about just that. Worst shows that performers, comedians, entertainers have had. And to me, it feels like they are always, you have so many of them at the beginning of your career that you don't even realize they're bad until later on because no one tells you they're bad. Do you have anything from like your early days of stand up where you look back and you're like, why would I ever take that? You know?
Um, yeah, I had a few. I had one, I may have been about like 8 years in. And I did a show at the Houston Improv, and I was opening for comic Cheryl Underwood, who I think, what's the show that's not The View, but it's very similar, like
The
The
talk,
Chat? The
the
Talk, yeah.
yeah,
I think she was on that for a moment.
yeah.
Um, so I did her show. She did 2 shows at Night Comics beforehand. And the first one did really well. Mind you, the show started really, really late. So it made the second show go even later. I'm
Yeah.
just setting up the stage. So the first one did well. She's like, come back and do the second show. So I did. I came back and did the second show. And there was about maybe 3 comics before me. And you could tell the crowd was starting to get a little restless. And I kind of understood that it wasn't what they wanted to see. And then Cheryl Underwood was probably not going to be coming out for a little later. And by the time I got up, they were still restless. And maybe within a few jokes, they started booing me Showtime at the Apollo style.
Oh my God.
was it was devastating. And I didn't know how to handle it because you don't know how to handle it. I didn't, so I kind of just kept going. And then this is the part, I think some of the things that what makes the show bad is how you handle it rather than what's happening to you.
Right.
Because you have a control over like how you can handle it. So she comes out and she's like, you got to tell this crowd's what up. You bet. And then she's using the N word, and I was like, well, I can't use the N word. Like, there's
Right.
no way I'm ever. So then, she's like, you got to yell at all these people, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna yell out. And then, it was just awkward, and then I just ended it early, and then I went back in the thing, and I was really like, I was devastated.
Yeah.
Like, I've never cried so hard in my entire life. It was shocking. I didn't know how to handle it. Now looking back, I totally would have handled it differently. I think I would have been on their side, like, of course, you guys are upset. Like, this show is an hour and a half late. You waited in line. You paid good money. This sucks. I think I would have thrown some people under the bus.
Yeah. Right.
Or roasted it and then been on their side and been calm about it. So that was devastating. Fortunately, I was going to therapy at the time. And then I went and did a show, an open mic, and everything was fine the next Monday, about 2 days later. And there's a feeling of like relief when something like that happens, because you went through one of the worst things that can ever happen to a public speaking situation, and you realize that you don't die of it and that you can move on, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad comic because it happened.
Yeah.
And it's a learning thing. And also, I look back and I'm like, because the worst thing has happened to you, how bad can it ever get after that? So then you've lived through the worst part of being a stand-up comic. So it kind of liberates you in a weird way.
Yeah, you if anything, one, it makes you appreciate the good audiences even more. You're like, well, you're not booing me, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But you're right, like as soon as you get through it, you're like, oh, I'm still here, like I'm still alive.
Yeah.
That's it's so funny. Like, would you think, looking back so far, is that there was a time where you were closest to like breaking, saying I'm done with stand up? Would that be it, or would there be another time?
Well, I always have those feelings no matter what. And you kind of just get over it, I guess. And now, I don't know. I'm just like, well, I'm already past the point of no return, so I can't quit. And now I just do stand up out of spite.
For yourself? Like,
Yeah. Well, like out of spite for anybody out there that's against me, where I'm like, fuck you, I'm staying in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so true. Like once you get to a point where you realize like you don't have any other marketable skills, you're like, I mean, this is gonna look real weird on a resume when they see from when I graduated college till now. People.
Yeah, how do I explain 15 years of nothing? And I had an argument with my sister. She's like, no, employers would really like that. I'm like, no, they don't. They don't, because what we do, like we have a lot of great skill set that actually can be worked in the office. Like we know how to work social media, we know how to market, we know how to work online stuff. I know how to edit videos. I know how to put caption. I know how to edit audio. I can speak in front of a crowd or an audience. Like I have that ability, but they don't see that. They just see that you've been like jerking off for like 15 years, like you're not doing anything.
Yeah, they would be like, "Oh, you're fun to talk to. You can't have a cubicle, but we would love to, hear more about your silly stories."
Yeah.
It's so true. Like comics do become like such a jack of all trades because I don't know, is it because we can't afford anyone else to do it, or we don't trust anyone else to do it, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think because you can't afford anyone to do it. So you just kind of learn how to do these things on your own. Like I feel like I always Google how to do when's the best time to like, I don't know, throw up social media, figure out your analytics. I went to school for multimedia and web design, and I didn't use it for a long time until now. Like, so now I know how to use any software. So I feel kind of confident in that. But yeah, I think you end up doing a lot of stuff for yourself.
Yeah. It is a great point where we are probably more marketable and equipped for to adapt than a lot of other people, but people would look at a resume with a long gap and say no, there's just
Yeah, I might as well just say I've been in a halfway house for about 15 years. Like, no, they just don't see it that way.
yeah. Oh God, what I feel like for people that don't do comedy, their biggest fear what they think happens a lot is like getting heckled. Like to me, everyone's like, "How do people yell out? Do they heckle?" And it probably doesn't happen as much as maybe people think. But do you think that's the worst you've ever been treated by an audience, or have you had a worse heckle, or just something where like that heckler that sticks with you? We're on the way home. You're like, I should have said this. You're like,
Yeah, I've had a few shows where like even that show where I felt like I got booed, like Showtime at the Apollo. I don't really think that is as bad as some of the other shows that I've dealt with in the past, where you just have that one table that is absolutely rude and it's pointed to you, and you wish they would leave. Like the one at the Houston Improv, that one you're just like, that was a collective whole. Like, how am I going to fight about that?
Right.
You know, that was a democracy. Like everybody was in line.
350 people agreed to not like me, you know?
Yeah, where you're like, how can you fight against that? It's the ones there's one I did I think in Saratoga that I still think about to this day. Only, and it's the same thing when I talked about earlier. It's like how I handled it rather than like what they did to me that
Yeah.
I cringe. Like there was these two ladies that just wouldn't shut the fuck up, and they were so rude. They ordered a pizza in the middle of the show. They distracted, and then instead of just kind of like ignoring them, I kind of laid into them, and then I said something that I cringe to this day. You know, like when you're trying to like they're like being so mean and shitty that you want to hurt them. And
Yes.
that's not a really good angle to go about when you're doing stand up. Like
No.
I think you should come from a place of niceness and empathy. And I remember being like, because they were single and by themselves and middle aged, I go, "Where are your husbands?" And I realized as soon as that left my mouth, that is so like not even, it's not a feminist thing. It was so misogynist. Like their worth is like because they're not married that I
Right.
should. But I was trying to think of anything and anything to like hit on them. And then as soon as I said that, I think I lost anybody else that was on my side at that moment. And then afterwards, that one you're just like, I derailed the whole show. And I was the feature. I wasn't even the headliner. So it made me feel like I ruined the show for the headliner that night.
Yeah.
And it was this guy that booked me twice, and I did 2 shows for him previously that went really well, and then I have had 2 shows with him that went horrible, and I've never been booked back since. But to be honest, like I didn't even like doing those gigs in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Where you're like, I don't know why I'm here. You know, you're
Where you're like, I can already really tell you like this isn't gonna work out.
Yeah, exactly. You get some of those shows where you kind of want to say like, I don't think I'm the right fit, or comedy maybe not the right fit for what you want to do. But I guess we're gonna do it. That moment of saying something to a heckler that you know you're gonna regret is really it's almost the same as like when you feel like you're about to have to fight somebody, you know, like where your voice kind of cracks a little bit with like
Yeah, I get this, like my mouth dries up and then my lip gets stuck to my teeth, and then I can feel like a heat wave come over me.
yeah, it is the same thing. Like once or twice I've had like where I'm going at it with somebody and you just snap and you're like, uh-oh. I have lost control of myself. Not only have I lost control of this crowd, but I've lost control of myself.
Yeah, you let them get to you. And I think the key is to not let them get to you.
Yeah, right. What is sort of then your how do you keep them from getting to you then? Like when you're on stage, you just sort of you're just comfortable now with it, or you just sort of go into a different mind state?
Well, part of me, I think it's but one way that I try to deal with hecklers is from an honest point of view of like, I legitimately ask them like, what do you think the outcome is that what did you want to gain from yelling that out at this moment? Did you think people were going to be like, "Oh, that was really cool what you just said?" Or like I want to know the psychology about it behind it, and I feel like that's a really great way to get humor from it,
Yeah,
because a lot of the times when people heckle, they're like, "Why did you think it's funny?" To be
yeah.
like, "Did you really think that I needed that piece of information right now?"
That is brilliant. And of all the ways that I've heard people handle, like I've heard the thing of like a lot of people paid to be here, you're ruining it for them, where they make it like financial, but to really ask like, what do you think you're doing is so smart because they don't have an answer. You know, like there's no good answer to give.
No, because yeah, any answer they give, it's either they're going to come off self-centered or it's going to be really funny that it'll work in your benefit. And then hopefully maybe they'll see, I don't know, that what they're doing is rude.
Right. Do you ever have someone come up to you after a show and they were like, helped you out there, or they're like kind of taking credit for interrupting, and it's like, wasn't that funny what we did? It's like, we're not Abbott and Costello, like we're
No, I know. That's like that happens a lot. That's why it's like hard. You can't really come from a mean place.
yeah,
I think when you're dealing with a heckler is because a lot of the times they think they're helping, which
yes.
is really sweet.
It's like a little kid in a kitchen. It's
Yeah,
like,
they're kind of dumb. You're like, "Oh, you're dumb."
right, yeah, it's like, oh, it's okay, you don't know what you're doing in here, like, let me
Yeah.
give you some carrots to cut up,
Well, I saw Jim Brewer. I did the Joker's cruise
Mhm.
back in February, and Jim Brewer was headlining. He was like one of the main like theater comics. And there was a really drunk lady that dressed up like Macho or Randy Savage. Who's the one that wears yellow and red, that wrestler?
Hulk Hogan.
No, she dressed like that, but she was so wasted and her bikini was so little that her like tits were everywhere, and it was just kind of like a drunk embarrassment. And she showed up right from the beginning of his set, and he was so funny about it because instead of being like in a weird way shaming her, he's like, "Lady, where are your parents?" And it was such a funny response, and it wasn't mean, and he worked with her really well, and then she kind of like, I don't know, fell asleep, that she quieted down.
Right. Sometimes people do that. You fall asleep. You're just like, oh, they're passed out.
Yeah, they're just drunk.
Yeah. What do you think? I feel like every comic has something similar, but post bomb, bad show. How do you cope? Like, what is your sort of vice or go to thing to help you cope?
Um, I used to be drinking, and I don't have that anymore, or smoking cigarettes, and I don't have that anymore.
That's good.
So now it's I like to call a friend and then we can laugh about it, and then even if I did something that was like bad, like the "Where's your husbands?" I can talk to my friend and they'll laugh, and they know exactly where where you're at and why you were feeling that. Instead of shaming you
Yeah.
for feeling like shit, it'll be funny because they're like, I completely relate to that. And so I usually call a friend. Usually it's my friend Adrian Appalucci.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to talk to somebody because, if not, you're just sitting if you're like on the road, you're sitting in like a Holiday Inn just alone with this. It's
It's
the worst.
awful. It's
It's the worst.
awful. And you can't get rid of that feeling until the next time you do a set.
Yeah, right. You're like looking. I've made this mistake of like looking in the town I'm in to see if they have any open mics, and it's like maybe I can get over there.
Yeah, redeem it.
Yeah, do a couple minutes. Oh God, it's the worst. I feel. I think a lot of people would agree. Like the bomb that comes when you're doing really well, like out of nowhere. You have, let's say you have 7 shows in a row and they're great, and you're like, I can't believe I'm not more successful. Like this
Yeah.
is
You're like, I am on fire.
right, and and then that 8th show comes and you can't figure it out and you bomb. What would you say? Do you have any runs like that to your recollection where you're like, I'm doing great, this is amazing, and then out of nowhere you're hit by, comedy justice?
Oh, yeah, that happens all the time, where it's usually like you'll do a Friday, Saturday show where the first 3 are pretty good because they're early shows, and then I would do like New York Comedy Club, which can be pretty hot, and then I would always get booked at the Stand at 1 a.m. and then just eat a dick. That you're like, I wish I could have had this as my first set so I don't have to walk home with this feeling
Oh God, yeah.
now. But those bombs are really good because they get you to realize that it's not personal
Yeah, that's a good point.
and that it just happens. And then sometimes you can actually have a really good time in your bomb.
Yeah, that when you can get to the place where you're like kind of just, well, let's see how long we can go without getting a laugh. It's kind of fun. You're,
Yeah.
it's just for you. This is, this might be not great, but I will try to like always do a set that's closest to my apartment last, because if it doesn't go well, then it's a very short walk.
Wait, you're cutting up, I think.
Sorry, let me see. It was, hold on a second. Any better or any worse?
Mine says my internet is stable. Die. Oh no.
Let me try. Still there?
Um Yeah, I'm still here. Should
Okay.
I leave and then come back again?
Yeah, I can try.
Wait, no, you're better now,
Oh, all good.
I
Still.
think. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll make it work. Anyway,
Okay. Wait, so what do? You try to do an apartment thing?
I try to do the last set of the night that's make it close to my apartment so that I can go home very quickly if it doesn't go well.
Yeah. That's why I've been loving these Zoom shows. I'm like, all right, they're not the full substitute of doing live stand up and they're not bad, but they're not good. So, I love that I'm just like a few feet away from my bed.
Yeah, I mean, you could just crawl from your couch into bed and feel okay. Like I live about 2 blocks from QED. So like when before Corona, I would always try to do their late mic because it was like if it goes well, I'm gonna feel great. I got another set in, and if it doesn't, I'm walking 2 minutes home and that's it. I'm not on the train. I'm not getting an Uber. Like, it's,
Oh yeah, that train ride home. There's nothing worse than eating it and then taking the train at I don't know 1 or 1:30 in the morning, and it takes you an hour to get back to Astoria, and then you're just sitting in it.
yeah. Have you, I made this mistake a couple of times where I'm so upset about what has happened where I got on the wrong train. And then I don't realize until like 3 stops that instead of going towards Astoria, I'm in Brooklyn or something. And I'm like, well, this made things a lot worse. Like
I haven't had that, but that sounds awful. But I do really get upset when I have to, I try to save money by not taking cabs. I mean, every now and then if I have a big bomb, I'm like, fuck it, I'm taking a cab home.
yeah, just get me back as soon as possible. God,
Yeah.
that is, and then like when you're on the road, you kind of how we were saying, like if you have a bad set, you don't have your apartment to run back to. You don't have your roommates or your friends. You're getting into a car or like the MC's like Prius, and they're taking you to your hotel, and they're like, "You want to hang out, or do you want to grab?" And they're like, "I have kids," So,
Oh, oh yeah. I always say this too is like if you bomb and you're on a showcase show and you've noticed that no one else has bombed, then I feel like it's your duty to leave and not let the other comics deal with your stink.
that is so true because they want to have fun. It's like,
I know, and you're just like there pretending that it didn't happen, and everyone knows that it happened. That I'm like, you should just leave. I'm
yeah,
gonna do y'all a favor, and I'm just gonna go so you can enjoy yourself.
everybody's high fiving, and then like someone comes up to you and like, you had a weird spot. I was like, did I? I went third.
Yeah,
It was like,
yeah. You're like, yeah, exactly.
oh my god, that is like the moment after you bomb, and like if it's a showcase, I am so anxious for the next comic to go up and be like, please, please do just as bad.
I know.
It's horrible.
I it is. It's you'd like to think that it wasn't just you, but sometimes it is just you.
It
Like,
is. It is quite literally just you, and
yeah.
everybody, is on fire. Or the other situation, which is so brutal, is like where you're looking at a crowd and you're like, man, I got him. Like everybody else might be struggling, and you're like, these people are gonna know what hit them when I'm done. And
Yeah.
you
They're
go
gonna
up
know what's
there,
up.
yeah, and you just tank, and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I know what comedy is anymore. Like,
Oh yeah. It's so weird though. I remember somebody let me do their show and they said I could do 30 minutes on it since I was taping my album. And then I was thinking, oh, cool, this will be great. And man, after about 10 minutes of just doing jokes, you're like, these aren't hitting. It's like talking into a pillow.
right.
There's like this weird buffer. You're just like, this is a huge, weird disconnect. And sometimes I feel like you have to go off script. And I felt like that's when I start doing crowd work to see, you're like, obviously they're just not into jokes right now. They want to have a hang rather than like somebody delivering a monologue. And it went way better. And then I would try to go back to jokes and it just wouldn't work again.
That is it's for me, that's one of the worst feelings, to realize that like I'm gonna have to do this whole set talking to them. And when you
I
think,
hate that.
when you're like, I'll just do a couple lines about this guy in the front row or this lady's, shoes, and I'll weave it right back in, and they shut off, and you're like, oh boy, well,
Yeah, they want like a party, like somebody that's just the party guy rather than like telling a set with a point of view. They just want to be like you're the camp counselor and you're including everybody in on this fun.
yeah. You know where I've noticed that, and I wonder about you, is in small towns, like they are almost upset if you don't shit on them. Like if you don't spend a few minutes shitting on how dumb their town is, or like making fun of their local things, they get like annoyed.
Yeah,
And
I think about that with corporate gigs too. I think they actually just want you to roast their job and their boss.
yeah, yeah. But that's always, to me, frightening, because they're like, you're getting the email from not the boss, usually. You're getting
Yeah.
the book from like someone in HR, and they're like, we're having this event. The boss is a horrible person. You can make fun of him. It's like, but does he know that? Like, does he?
Yeah. Are you setting me up for failure?
Right. Yeah. That is because that. What do you think? Worst. I don't know if people fully get how bad corporate gigs can be, because who would know unless you do them, or you're at one. Worst corporate gig. What do you think it is?
Well, fortunately, I haven't really done much. I did one at like sometimes Caroline's, somebody will book it for a private party.
Yeah.
And I think it was for a bunch of property management people. And I just wasn't hitting that well. But I think they just preferred it if you just talked about property management stuff. And that was doing a little bit better. But
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't know. You never know. I don't know you just don't know sometimes what your boundaries are. That's why sometimes it's like good to watch other comics before you.
Yeah. To kind of see, all right, what's working, what isn't working.
Yeah, and if they're like laying on some person and you realize that that people they're losing interest, that you're just laying in on somebody, then you're just like, all right, noted, I won't mention this. I've done shows at Soho House and then the NoHo House or whatever. And usually the comics will start making fun of everyone that's wealthy because you have to have money in order to be a member of that place.
Yeah.
And I always found that those jokes never hit well. And then I would be like, oh, I noticed that if you start talking about money with these people or making them feel like shit for having money, that it doesn't do well, that you're like, okay, I'll just stick to my act. And I always noticed that I did better than some of the other comics who were just trying to think that you're supposed to call out the elephant in the room. And sometimes you shouldn't call out the elephant in the room.
Right. Yeah. It's, sometimes they do just want jokes, you know,
Yeah.
and then it's fun to see the comics that don't have the jokes. It's like when they go up there and they're just shitting on the crowd, or like I'm sure you've seen this where a comic will go up and shit on a good crowd, and they'll be
Yeah.
like, "You guys, what are you all tourists? You're all idiots." And I'm like, "What, man? They were all laughing like 30 seconds
Yeah.
ago, you
They
know?"
were into this and they're not dumb. They're not dumb.
Yeah, that is such a pet peeve of mine. Where like a a comic will disrupt the show because they just don't, they have nowhere else to be. You know, they can't fit in if they don't do that. It's,
Yeah.
you know, and then you're especially if you're going after them. You know, you're like, shit. Like I had a video camera set up. Like I was gonna tape this. Like you know, and now I'm gonna have to go pick up your pieces. It's the worst. Um, yeah. Oh, did I freeze there? Yeah.
Oh, did I freeze? We're
No,
back.
no, we're good. We're good. I thought it froze for a second, but
Okay.
no worries. Let me ask you this, Sarah, before we wrap up here. Very cliche question, but if there's anything you've learned from, you know, day one to now of how to handle bad gigs, how to handle hecklers, how to handle when a crowd gets rowdy, what is the thing you think was most important to, you know, the success that you have now that you've learned?
Well, I definitely think you learn a lot from bombing. I think I learned more from bombing than I have from doing well all the time. Especially if you're a person that has stage fright or like anxiety, performance anxiety, because the more you bomb, the more you realize that it's not personal.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Like if the more I would do shows at LOL and you're just like, after a while, you're just like, yeah, it's not because they don't like me. They just don't like here. They don't like it here. And I'm part of here.
Yeah.
So that, and then I also feel like what I've learned from bombing or bad sets is that never take it personal and try to still have fun in the moment and see where, or be relaxed. Never, don't get emotional about it because I think people don't like it when you lose your cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Because as soon as they feel that you're out of control, that you could just feel them like, we're done. You know,
Yeah.
we came here because we thought you were gonna run this, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, you it looks like you need some help. God, I can't imagine Cheryl Underwood's. Oh boy, I'm having a stroke. Her crowd turning on, like when you said the night at the Apollo, like that is just God. I mean, if people don't know, it's like booing and standing and
It's booing and get the fuck off the stage. Like they were just like next, next. And from what I gathered, most people after me bombed. There was a few that managed to get momentum or like get them on their side, but those were the guys that had been doing it a lot longer and had been exposed to like a lot more kind of shows. Because at that time, like in a weird way, I never really had bad sets like that. So it just kind of like, you know, when somebody kicks your knees from behind you, it just kind of,
yeah,
it took me off guard. I think I had it good for a while, and it was like a really big learning
yeah,
lesson.
yeah. I love too, like when a comic gives you advice that you so clearly can't use. It's like go up there and yell at them. It's like, are you
Yeah.
crazy? Like,
You're like, well, first of all, it goes against my type. Like, I'm
yeah,
not really a confrontational person.
yeah,
I don't really yell. So doing that, that's what I was more upset about than the audience. I was more upset that I went against character than sticking true to who I was. Like you can't go wrong if you just stay, you know, true to yourself. Like how would you handle it, or how is your character on stage? How would they handle this?
yeah. Just God, it's like, who do you think I am, Bernie Mac? It's
Yeah.
like, are you crazy? Just
Yeah.
yell at them? What?
They're not gonna like
You
this.
want me to die? It's like, you.
Oh my God. I'm so grateful that this was pre-social media because I am pretty sure. I mean, of course, if we had smartphones back then, people would have taped that. They would have loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be a great clip. It would be like, you know.
I mean, we've talked about what kind of propelled Bill Burr is that set that he did in Philly where they're booing and him. He's like, "Fuck you guys, I'm going for it." I mean, that how fun was that set? And I think that really got him known.
Absolutely. Like that put him on the radar for so many people because it was like when had you seen something like that? You know, like I was just talking to for the podcast Jimmy Schubert, and he was on that show with him,
Yeah,
and he said when Bill came off, he was like a different person. You know, like he went on stage one way and he came back off another,
yeah.
and it wasn't after that where he really became what he is today. God, that is yeah. I mean,
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it would have worked in my favor. Who knows?
yeah. Instead of like comedian destroys heckler, it's like crowd destroys comedian. It's just everyone's just like, but when does she get them back? No, she doesn't.
Well, like Tiffany Haddish had that in Miami this last year, and I've done Miami a few times, and I'm like, girl, I get it. That's a hard audience out there.
Yeah.
They like a certain comic.
Yeah. There are certain clubs in this country where like there are two comics that could play this room, and that's it. And all the weekends are just a wash. You know?
Yeah, they're not gonna get. They weren't into like dry, jokes. They want performance. They want like an actor on stage, like, and that's not what I do. So, and I'm fine with that. There's times where like they'll put me on like after an Aaron Berg, and I have no problem to say, look, I can't follow Aaron Berg, and I think for the benefit of the show as a whole, you should put me up before him.
Yeah.
Let's build up to him. There's no way you can go back to what it was before. You can go more, but you can't go back. It's weird when bookers do that.
It's hard to go into like observational humor after someone is just like accosted the whole crowd. Like, look at this guy with his pedophile mustache. It's like, yeah, it's like, what?
I know, he's asking people if they like black cock, and he's doing Chinese eyes that you're like, I can't, what am I supposed to do? Talk about my printer after this? Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, let me go on before him. And I don't think it makes me worse of a comic. It's a different kind of mindset. And I think the show would be better if we built up to that rather than like start it and then try to get it back on track again.
Yeah, it's not one person's better than the other. I mean, like, you could have two musicians that are great at music. One plays the flute and the other one plays, the electric guitar. And it's like, it's going to be hard to follow with just from a noise level. Like,
how can you, like, after you just rocked out, that listening to flute music is what you do on your drive home before you go to sleep. And you're like, I appreciate that, but like, I'm not going to see it at a show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or after. You're not going to see it after. Like, like Metallica,
I know, you're like, what's the point? So stop, bookers, stop doing that.
Please stop doing that. Wow.
Well, it's like you do the road and then you're like, somebody just asked me who, do I have anyone in mind of like an opener? And I know a lot of headliners like bringing their own openers because there's you want to build up to however you are. Like, I don't know. I'm sure like Todd Barry's not asking Yamanika to go on the road because they're two different. He's such a milder comic and she's such a beast on stage.
Yeah.
That you're like, it has to be the other. You want a comic that opens for you that complements your act.
Absolutely. Like I feel like I was able to make a living off of being like a very easy person to get along with, like off stage, and also like not a lot of energy on stage. Like I'll do a couple act outs and I have some bits where I'm a little bit louder, but like I'm not like running side to side. And
I'm not dabbing myself with the towel during my act because it's so
if I'm sweating, it's because of
performance-y.
the lights, it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
because yeah, right. Yeah. It's always bad when your opener is like, can I get 2 more stools on stage and 3 towels? And it's like, oh no. Oh no.
I know. Like, shit. I know. Oh my God. Whenever I see a show that's like that and then somebody just like completely tears the room apart, I'm like, oh my God, sweating that I'm going to have to follow that. Like, how do I change that energy?
Yeah, right. God, it's and all you can do is like you said, be yourself. It's
Yeah.
like because if you try to do what they're doing, it's so inauthentic. They could just tell.
Oh, yeah. The audience they're actually like quite intuitive.
Yeah, they know.
Yeah.
They know
Yeah.
when you're not who you are. Yeah. Oh my God. Especially, the Houston Improv. Yeah, they'll know. They'll know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. As
That's
a
like,
group whole, they knew.
yeah, right. That's the Pittsburgh Improv is where I started, and it was predominantly a black club, and a black crowd will tell you right away you're not who you are. Like
Oh, they have the best heckles. Like some of the best heckles, I'm like, oh my God, that was such a sniper hit. That is hilarious. And that's funnier than anything I've ever heard on
yeah.
stage.
I mean, I used to work there a lot because I was,
Did I cut
very,
out?
oh, sorry. Let me try.
Oh no.
Still there?
Yeah. It's just like my Wi-Fi is being weird. It's been going on and off today.
Yeah, our cable and our Wi-Fi in our apartment was horrible for a couple days. We restarted it. Everybody's on it. Like everybody's home. Let me see here. Let me try this. Oh, cool. There you are. Still still working at all?
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Are you doing video or is this just
It is video and audio,
Yeah,
but
it's fine. Sorry about that.
no, no, no.
I've been having this all day.
No worries. We can cut it out and trim it up and stuff, obviously. But
Okay, great.
yeah, no worries, no worries. Well, I'll tell you, we can wrap up then, so I don't keep you for too much longer. I don't want to take your
Yeah,
time
sure.
or your Wi-Fi. But anyway, yeah. So Sarah, thank you for doing this, and please tell people where they can find you, where they can see you, where they can hear you, whatever.
Sure. You guys can follow me on Instagram. I'm trying to build my Instagram base up. Or I love Twitter. That's where I shine, but I follow me on Instagram.
Okay. Cool. 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 Instagram
At
and
Tollemache. I didn't even give my name.
yeah.
STOLLEMACHE. I'm like, you can figure it out.
Just Google. Just start searching.
Guys, just Google.
Yeah. All right. And I guess nobody has dates right now, but when you do have dates,
Oh, I don't know if this will come out before then, but I'm at the Arlington Draft House July 17th and the 18th.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on getting booked in a global
Thank
pandemic.
you.
Yeah.
It's a test run.
Cool. Right on. Well, I will let you know when this comes out. It should come out before then, so I can put those dates in too. But yeah, and if there's anything else you want me to plug when it comes out, just let me know. And I really appreciate you
Okay.
doing this. It was awesome. You were
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Sorry that my internet connection's shitty.
no worries, no worries. Have a good rest of the day, and maybe I'll see you around Astoria or something.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully soon.
Yeah, right on.
All
Thanks.
right. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Bye.